I thought I was coming home to peace. 23 years in Delta Force, countless missions across 4 continents, and I'd finally put in my papers for retirement. My daughter Emma had invited me back to our quiet Arizona border town, the same dusty stretch of desert where I'd raised her alone after her mother passed. I was supposed to arrive tomorrow, but I caught an earlier flight. I wanted to surprise her. I'd been planning this moment for months, imagining her face when I showed up a day early with her favorite chocolate-covered pretzels from that artisan shop in Alexandria that she'd loved when she visited me at Fort Bragg. I had no idea I was walking into a nightmare that would turn my homecoming into the longest, most violent hour of my life. I had no idea that the training I'd spent 2 decades perfecting, the skills I thought I'd retired along with my commission, would be called upon one final time. Not in some distant desert, not in some covert operation hidden behind layers of classification, but in my own living room to save the one person in this world I'd die for without hesitation. The approach. The house looked normal from the outside. Emma's old Civic sat in the driveway, one tire slightly flat like always. She never remembered to check the pressure, no matter how many times I reminded her. The porch light was on, casting that familiar yellow glow across the cracked concrete steps I'd been meaning to fix for years. The desert air was cool against my face, carrying the scent of creosote and dust, mixed with the faint smell of someone's barbecue from down the street. Everything looked exactly as it should on a quiet Tuesday night in a quiet border town. But something felt wrong. It was the kind of wrong that every combat veteran knows instinctively. The hair on the back of your neck standing up, the subtle shift in your breathing, the way your pupils dilate and your muscles tense without conscious thought, your body recognizing danger before your conscious mind catches up. The front door was ajar. Not much, maybe an inch, but enough that I could see a sliver of light from inside cutting across the darkness of the porch. Emma was religious about locking doors. Growing up this close to the border, you learned that habit young, and you never forgot it. She locked the door when she got home from work. She locked it when she took out the trash. She locked it when she checked the mail. It was muscle memory for her, drilled in by years of living in a region where cartel violence occasionally spilled across from Juarez. I set my duffel bag down silently on the porch, moving it off to the side near the potted cactus Emma had been trying to keep alive for 3 years. My hand moved automatically to my hip, reaching for a sidearm that wasn't there anymore. Civilian now, unarmed, just another retired soldier coming home. But my training didn't retire when I did. The instincts, the reflexes, the tactical awareness, those were permanent. I pushed the door open slowly, every muscle in my body coiled tight. The hinges made no sound. I'd oiled them myself last time I visited, 6 months ago when I'd come through for her birthday. The hallway was empty, but I could hear voices coming from the living room. Male voices, multiple speakers, laughter. The kind of laughter that makes your skin crawl, high-pitched and cruel, punctuated by words in Spanish that I recognized from operations in Juarez and Tijuana. Cartel slang, street talk about money, about territory, about bitches and punks and making examples. And then I heard her. "Please, please stop." Emma's voice, hoarse, terrified, broken in a way that turned my blood to ice and my vision to a red haze. That was my little girl, my daughter, the person I'd raised alone after her mother died of cancer when Emma was just 7 years old, the girl who used to wait by the window for me to come home from deployment, who'd run down the driveway screaming, "Daddy!" before I even got out of the car. The woman she'd become, kind, brilliant, dedicated to teaching kids in an underfunded border school because she believed education could break cycles of poverty and violence. And someone was hurting her. I moved down the hallway like a ghost, my back against the wall, breathing controlled despite the rage building in my chest like a physical pressure. 23 years of training took over. I wasn't James Mitchell, retired father, anymore. I was Colonel Mitchell, Delta Force, the Desert Phantom, the operator who'd conducted 47 Black Ops missions with a 100% success rate, the man who'd walked into Taliban strongholds alone and walked out covered in blood that wasn't his. The living room doorway was ahead, light spilling out into the hall. I could see shadows moving on the opposite wall, 4, maybe 5 distinct shapes. I pressed myself against the wall and edged closer, controlling my breathing, slowing my heart rate. Combat breathing. 4 seconds in, hold for 4. 4 seconds out, hold for 4. Calm, cold, ready. I reached the doorway and looked inside. What I saw in that moment is burned into my brain forever. It's the image I see when I close my eyes at night. The image that justified everything that came next. The image that still, 3 months later, makes my hands shake with a rage so pure it feels like touching a live wire. Emma was in the center of the room, on her knees. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back, connected by a short chain to another zip tie around her ankles, forcing her into a painful crouch that put stress on her shoulders and lower back. Her face was swollen on the left side, her eye nearly closed from the swelling. Her lip was split and still bleeding, a thin trail of blood running down her chin onto her torn shirt. Her shoulder was bare where the fabric had been ripped, and I could see bruises, dark purple and yellow, covering her arms, her collarbone, her neck. Someone had hit her, multiple times, hard. But it was her eyes that broke something fundamental inside me. They were the eyes of someone who'd given up hope. The eyes of someone who'd accepted that this was how they died. Empty. Defeated. The light that had always defined my daughter, her optimism, her strength, her unshakable belief in human goodness, was gone. 4 men surrounded her, young, maybe early 20s, dressed in designer jeans and expensive sneakers that probably cost more than Emma made in a week. Gold chains glinted under the living room lights, flashy watches, gang tattoos crawled up their necks, crude prison ink mixed with professional work. I recognized some of the symbols. Los Zetas, one of the most vicious cartels operating on both sides of the border. One of them held a phone, recording, laughing as he narrated in Spanish, "Look at this puta, acting tough. Carlos's little girlfriend thought she could say no to him, thought she could embarrass him in front of his boys at Rosita's bar, thought she was too good for the Salazar family." Another one, Carlos apparently, kicked over Emma's purse, spilling the contents across the hardwood floor my mother had helped me install 15 years ago. Lipstick, keys, her wallet, loose change, a small stuffed bear I'd won for her at a county fair when she was 9. He crushed the bear under his boot. "Where's the money your poppy sends you, huh? Delta Force man, big shot soldier. Bet he's got accounts somewhere. Bet you got access. Bet he sends his little girl fat checks from all those black ops bonuses." Carlos crouched down in front of Emma, grabbing her chin roughly and forcing her to look at the camera. "Smile for daddy, puta. Maybe we send him this video. Maybe we ask for a donation. You know, a thank you for letting his daughter date quality men like me." The others laughed. One of them, skinny, with a teardrop tattoo under his right eye, mimicked a salute. "Thank you for your service, pendejo. Your daughter's throat game is going to thank us later." They all laughed at that. Emma closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. The fourth guy, heavy-set, probably 250 pounds, with a pistol tucked in his waistband, sat on my couch eating my chips. "How long we going to do this, Carlos? It's almost midnight. I got a thing in Juarez at 2. "Relax, Gordo. We're just getting started. Marco said to make her suffer, said to make her beg, said to break her so bad she'll never talk back to another man as long as she lives." Carlos pulled out a knife, a folding tactical blade, nice quality. He held it up to Emma's face. "You gonna apologize to Marco, puta? You gonna get on camera and tell him you're sorry for disrespecting him? Tell him you're a stupid bitch who didn't know her place?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry, please, I'm sorry." "Louder," Carlos slapped her. The sound echoed in my skull like a gunshot. Emma sobbed. I'm sorry, Marco, I didn't mean it, please." "That's better. But you know what? I don't think you mean it yet. I think you need more convincing." Carlos looked at the others. "Who wants to help convince her?" Phone guy grinned. "I'll educate this bitch." I've been in war zones. I've seen brutality that would make civilians vomit. I've interrogated terrorists who'd beheaded hostages. I've pulled my brother's bodies out of burning vehicles after IED strikes. I've lost friends to sniper fire and suicide bombers. But nothing in 23 years of combat in the world's worst hellholes prepared me for the cold, calculated fury that descended on me in that moment. My daughter, my Emma, the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest watching Sesame Street, the kid who insisted on joining her school's ROTC program because, "I want to be like you, Dad." The teenager who'd written me letters every single day during my deployments, filling them with drawings and jokes and updates about her life. The young woman who'd chosen to stay in this dusty border town to teach at-risk kids at an underfunded elementary school because someone has to give these kids hope, Dad. Someone has to show them there's another way. They had brutalized her, chained her like an animal, humiliated her, filmed it for their entertainment, and they were laughing about it, planning to do worse. The rage that filled me wasn't hot. It wasn't the explosive anger that makes people yell and lose control. It was cold, Arctic, the kind of cold that comes from deep space, absolute zero, the absence of all warmth and mercy. It was the operational mindset I'd cultivated over 2 decades, the ability to turn off every human emotion except the drive to complete the mission. And the mission was simple: eliminate the threats, save my daughter, make them pay. My eyes swept the room with tactical precision, 23 years of training overriding emotion. 4 targets: Carlos in front of Emma, approximately 8 feet from my position. Phone guy to the left, still recording, approximately 10 feet away. Skinny with the teardrop tattoo standing near the window, maybe 12 feet. Heavyset on the couch, 15 feet, partially obscured by the coffee table. Weapons assessment: visible pistol on heavyset guy's waistband. Carlos has knife, currently in his right hand. No other visible weapons, but I had to assume they were armed. Cartel thugs always carried. Furniture: couch, coffee table, Emma's reading chair, a sturdy wooden thing with thick armrests, probably 8 pounds. My mother had given us that chair. Solid oak. That would do. Exit routes: front door behind me, kitchen door to my right, back sliding door past the couch. Windows closed, curtains half drawn. Threats neutralized in order of danger. Gun guy first, then Carlos with the knife, then phone guy, then Skinny. Optimal approach: speed and overwhelming violence. They're not expecting resistance. They think they're safe. Use that. Time elapsed since entering hallway, approximately 90 seconds. Time spent analyzing tactical situation, 3 seconds. I was already moving. The chair. The reading chair was 2 steps into the room, just past the doorway on the right side. I grabbed it with both hands as I entered, swung it up and around in one fluid motion, using my hips and core for power, just like I'd been taught in combatives training 20 years ago, and brought it down on the heavy-set guy's head before any of them even registered my presence. The sound was like a tree branch snapping, a wet crack. Wood connecting with skull with approximately 120 pounds of force behind it. Physics and violence meeting at a point in space that used to be a human head. He went down instantly, his body crumpling sideways off the couch, the pistol clattering from his waistband onto the floor. His eyes rolled back, unconscious before he hit the ground. I kicked the gun under the couch with my right foot, pivoted on my left, and drove the chair legs first into Carlos's sternum as he tried to stand, his mouth open in shock, the knife still in his hand. The 4 wooden legs hit him like battering rams, concentrated force, and I put my full body weight behind it. He flew backward 3 feet, hit the wall hard enough to crack the drywall, and slid down gasping for air, his diaphragm spasming, unable to breathe. The knife fell from his hand, and I kicked it away. Phone guy finally reacted. He dropped his cell phone and reached for something in his jacket pocket. Gun. He was going for a gun. My body moved before my conscious mind registered the threat. I swung the chair horizontally into his ribs with a baseball bat swing, full rotation, hips and shoulders, all my weight behind it. I heard ribs crack. 3, maybe 4. The distinctive sound of bone breaking, like green wood snapping. He doubled over, screaming, his hands clutching his side, the gun forgotten. 3 down, 1 left. Time elapsed, maybe 10 seconds. Skinny, with the teardrop tattoo, finally managed to process what was happening. He pulled a knife from his back pocket, a cheap switchblade, the kind you buy at gas stations for $20. He lunged at me, wild and panicked. No training, no technique. Just a street punk with a weapon trying to look tough. I sidestepped easily, let his momentum carry him past me, and brought the chair down on his knife hand. The bones in his wrist shattered. I felt them give way under the wood. He screamed, and the blade skittered across the floor. Then I drove my knee into his gut, full force, all 190 pounds of body weight behind it, and dropped him face first onto the coffee table. The glass top shattered with a sound like a small explosion, and he collapsed into the wreckage, cut and bleeding and moaning. 4 men down, 15 seconds from entry to complete tactical superiority. I dropped the chair, one leg broken now, 2 rungs cracked, but it had done its job, and pulled my pocket knife to cut Emma's zip ties. My hands were shaking, not from adrenaline, from rage so pure it felt like electricity in my veins, like touching a live wire, like all the violence I'd ever done in 2 decades of war distilled into this single moment. "It's okay, baby," I said, though my voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded flat, cold, mechanical, the voice I used on operations, the voice that had interrogated terrorists and ordered airstrikes and told men they were about to die. "It's over. I've got you. You're safe now." The zip ties snapped apart under my knife, and Emma collapsed forward into my arms, sobbing, her body shaking like she was freezing. I held her for 3 seconds. That's all I could allow myself, because the tactical situation wasn't fully secure. Then gently moved her behind me, positioning my body between her and the 4 men on the floor. "Baby, I need you to go to your room, lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. Understand?" She looked at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. "Dad?" "Do it now, Emma, please." Something in my face, maybe the coldness, maybe the absolute certainty, made her nod. She scrambled to her feet, limping because her left ankle was swollen, probably twisted when they'd forced her down, and disappeared down the hallway. I heard her bedroom door close. The lock clicked. Only then did I turn my full attention back to the 4 men in my living room, because Carlos was trying to get up. The interrogation. I walked over to him slowly. He was still gasping, one hand pressed against the wall for support, the other clutching his chest where the chair had hit him. His eyes were watering from the pain. When he looked up and saw me standing over him, something changed in his expression. The arrogance was gone, the cruel amusement. He was seeing me clearly for the first time, not as some abstract soldier in a story, but as an immediate, overwhelming threat. "Who the fuck are you?" he wheezed. I didn't answer immediately. I grabbed him by his gold chain, thick rope chain, probably cost him $2,000, lifted him partially off the ground, and slammed him back against the wall. Not hard enough to knock him out, hard enough to make sure he felt it, hard enough that his teeth rattled and his vision probably swam. "My daughter," I said quietly. Each word was a bullet, precise, controlled, deadly. "You put your hands on my daughter." Carlos's bravado flickered. "Man, we didn't know." I slammed him again, harder this time. The drywall cracked further behind his head. "You put your hands on my daughter. You chained her like an animal. You beat her. You humiliated her. You filmed it. You threatened her. You planned to rape her and kill her." "No, man, we weren't gonna." "Don't lie to me." My voice dropped even lower, quieter, more dangerous. "I heard you. I heard every word. You were going to hurt her, use her, and dump her body in the desert. Say it." Carlos's eyes darted around the room, looking for support. Phone guy was whimpering on the floor, clutching his broken ribs, blood coming from his mouth where he'd probably punctured a lung. Skinny was out cold in the broken glass, his face a mess of cuts. Heavyset was still unconscious, breathing but not moving. No help was coming. "Say it," I repeated. We were following orders, man. Marco said—" "I don't care what Marco said. I care what you did. You made a choice. You walked into this house. You hurt her. That was your choice. Now you're going to live with the consequences, starting right now." I released the chain and he slumped against the wall. Then I grabbed his right hand, the hand that had held the knife, the hand he'd used to slap Emma, and bent his index finger backward until it broke. The snap was loud in the quiet room. Carlos screamed. "That's one," I said calmly. "You touched her face. You made her bleed. You made her cry. I'm going to break every finger on this hand. Then I'm going to start on the other one. Then I'm going to move to other bones. And you're going to tell me everything I want to know. Who you work for, why you're here, what you wanted with her, where Marco is, what your organization is planning. And if you lie to me even once, if you hold back even a single detail, I will make you wish I'd killed you with that chair. Carlos was hyperventilating, cradling his broken finger. You're fucking insane. You can't do this. We're Los Zetas. Do you know what that means? Do you know what happens to people who fuck with us? I broke his middle finger. Another snap. Another scream. I know exactly what it means. Los Zetas, Juarez chapter, one of the most violent cartels in North America, responsible for thousands of deaths, torture, beheadings, mass graves. You use fear as a weapon. You terrorize communities. You corrupt officials. You poison entire regions with your drugs and your violence. I know all of it. I spent 2 years doing operations along this border in 2019 and 2020. I know your organization inside and out. So don't threaten me with your reputation. Your reputation is why I'm not showing any mercy. I grabbed his ring finger. Talk. Okay, fuck. Her boyfriend. Her ex-boyfriend. Marco Salazar. She dumped him last week, embarrassed him in front of his crew at Rosita's bar, called him a punk, a wannabe, said he was nothing without his daddy's name. You don't disrespect a Salazar like that. You don't embarrass Marco in public. We're Los Zetas, man. Can't let that disrespect slide. Word gets out that some teacher bitch can mouth off and walk away. That's weakness. That gets you killed in our world. So Marco sent you to teach her a lesson. Yeah. Make her apologize on video. Make her beg. Make her cry. Then get some money out of her military dad. You. We knew you were Delta. Knew you probably had cash somewhere. Marco figured we could squeeze you for 20, 30 grand easy. And after, he trailed off. I broke his ring finger. After what? After we were supposed to dump her, in the desert, make it look like she disappeared. A lesson to anyone else who thinks they can disrespect the family. The coldness in my chest spread. I'd known, of course. I'd heard them talking about it. But hearing him admit it out loud, hearing the casual brutality in his voice, made it real in a way that threatened to break my operational calm. I released his hand and stepped back. Carlos slumped to the floor, cradling his broken fingers, sobbing. Phone guy was still whimpering. Skinny was starting to stir in the glass. Heavyset groaned and rolled over. I needed them all conscious. I needed them all to understand what came next. I walked to the kitchen, filled a pitcher with cold water, came back, and poured it over Heavyset's head. He sputtered awake, eyes unfocused, blood still seeping from his scalp where the chair had connected. Then I kicked Skinny. Not hard, just enough to bring him around. He groaned and opened his eyes, his face a mask of blood and glass cuts. Everyone sit against that wall, I ordered, pointing to the far wall away from the exits. Now. They struggled to comply, supporting each other, leaving smears of blood on my hardwood floor. Carlos clutching his broken fingers. Phone guy holding his ribs, breathing shallow. Skinny, with glass embedded in his cheek. Heavyset with a concussion, swaying slightly, unfocused. 4 young men who'd walked in here thinking they were predators. 4 young men who now understood they were prey. I pulled out phone guy's cell from where he'd dropped it. The video was still recording. 53 minutes of footage. I stopped the recording, checked the file. They'd been here almost an hour. An hour of terrorizing Emma. An hour that would haunt her for years, probably forever. An hour that had earned them what came next. You like making videos? I asked quietly. I held up the phone. Good, because we're going to make another one. And this one's going to be a lesson, a message. Something your friends will watch and remember every time they think about hurting innocent people. I started recording. The message. For the next 45 minutes, I conducted what the Army would politely call an enhanced interrogation, and what anyone with a conscience would call torture. I'm not proud of it. I'm not going to detail every moment, every technique, every scream. But I will say this. I used every method I'd learned in 23 years of special operations. Every pressure point, every joint lock, every nerve cluster. every psychological technique for inducing compliance and breaking resistance. I made them tell me about the Juarez chapter of Los Zetas, about their operations, drug routes, distribution networks, safe houses, corrupt officials on both sides of the border. I made them name names, addresses, phone numbers, bank accounts. I made them tell me about Marco Salazar, not just Emma's ex-boyfriend, but a lieutenant in the organization, son of regional boss Antonio Salazar, a young man who'd grown up in wealth and violence and believed himself untouchable. I made them tell me about other victims, other girls they'd intimidated, other families they'd terrorized, other bodies they'd dumped in the desert. And I made them admit, on camera, clearly, without ambiguity, exactly what they'd done to Emma, what they'd planned to do, who gave the orders, how they'd laughed about it on the drive over. When they started begging, when Carlos was crying like a child, and Phone Guy was vomiting from pain, and Heavyset was promising me money, anything, just please stop, I made them call Marco. I put the phone on speaker, held it up so the microphone would catch everything, and let it ring. 3 rings. Then a young, arrogant voice answered. Carlos, about fucking time, pendejo. You got the video? You got the money? This better be good after making me wait all night. I spoke instead, my voice calm and cold. Marco Salazar. Silence on the other end. Breathing. Processing. Then, who the fuck is this? Where's Carlos? Colonel James Mitchell, United States Army, retired. Delta Force. Carlos and his friends just gave me a very interesting debriefing about their evening activities. Very thorough, very detailed. I now know quite a bit about your organization, Marco. I know about the Juarez chapter. I know about your roots. I know about your safe houses in Sunland Park and Anthony. I know about the corrupt Border Patrol agent you have on payroll, Agent Rodriguez, badge number 4457. I know about the tunnel system under the dry cleaner on Mesa Street. I know about your distribution network through the truck stops on I-10. Carlos was very informative once he understood the alternative. Another long silence. I could hear Marco's breathing change. Faster. Shallower. Listen, man, whoever you are, there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. You sent 4 men to my house to brutalize my daughter because she wounded your pride by breaking up with you in public. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a conscious choice. That's a coordinated attack. That's a declaration of war. You don't know who you're fucking with. Marco's voice rose, the arrogance returning as he processed the threat. My father is... I know exactly who I'm fucking with. Your father is Regional Commander Antonio Salazar. Your Uncle Diego runs distribution in El Paso until he got arrested last year. He's currently in Coahuila State Prison doing 15 years for murder. Your older brother Roberto was killed in 2023 during a rival cartel dispute in Juarez. Your mother lives in a compound outside the city under 24-hour guard. You've got approximately 40 men under your direct command, another 150 in the larger network. Annual revenue for your chapter is estimated at $30 to $40 million. You personally are worth maybe $3 million, most of it hidden in accounts in Panama and the Caymans. I know everything, Marco. Your boys were very thorough in their confessions. The silence this time was different, heavier. I could hear someone else in the background saying something in rapid Spanish. Marco covered the phone, but I heard, he knows about the Mesa Street tunnel. He knows about Rodriguez. How the fuck does he know? When Marco came back on, his voice had changed. Lower, controlled, dangerous. If you hurt my men, too late. They're hurt, they're broken, and they're begging. Would you like to hear? I pointed the phone at Carlos. He started speaking immediately, words tumbling over each other in panicked Spanish. Marco, man, I'm sorry. He's fucking insane. He knows everything. He broke my fingers. He knows about your dad, about the organization. Please, just do what he says, please. I pulled the phone back. As you can hear, Carlos is very motivated to cooperate now. Funny how quickly tough guys break when they're on the receiving end of violence instead of dishing it out. What do you want? Marco's voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the fear underneath. I want you to tell your father that you made a mistake, that you acted without authority and targeted a civilian, the daughter of a United States military officer, for personal reasons. You're going to make it clear that this was your stupidity, not organizational business. You're going to make it clear that any retaliation will bring consequences your father doesn't want. Why the fuck would I do that? Because if you don't, I'm sending this video and every piece of information your boys gave me to every federal agency I have contacts in. DEA, FBI, Border Patrol, ATF, Homeland Security. I'm sending it with detailed maps and documentation. I'll burn your entire operation to the ground. Every tunnel, every safe house, every corrupt official, every asset. I'll make sure the next 10 years of your father's life are spent defending against federal prosecutions and rival cartels moving into the vacuum. Or, I paused for effect, you can be smart. You can admit this was a personal fuck-up. You can pull back. You can leave my daughter alone, and we never speak again. And if I don't, if we decide you're too much of a threat to leave alive, then I'll do something much worse than sending videos to federal agents. I'll come find you personally. I'll walk into whatever compound or safe house you're hiding in. And Marco, these 4 were practice. You'll be the real lesson. And I promise you, by the time I'm done, you'll be begging me to just call the FBI instead. I could hear breathing on the other end, more voices in the background, arguing in Spanish. Then a different voice came on the line, older, harder, with the kind of authority that came from decades of brutality and survival. Colonel Mitchell, this is Antonio Salazar, Marco's father. The regional boss himself. Good, saved me a second call. Mr. Salazar, you have my son's men in your custody. You have made threats against my family. You have extracted sensitive information through torture. This is very disrespectful, Colonel. Very dangerous. You understand that there must be consequences for such actions. Your son ordered the torture, attempted rape, and planned murder of my daughter in my home. You want to talk to me about disrespect and consequences? Antonio was quiet for a moment. I could hear muffled voices. He was consulting with someone, probably his security chief or consigliere. When he spoke again, his voice was measured, calculated. Marco is young, passionate. He makes mistakes when his pride is wounded. I understand he acted foolishly, but surely we can resolve this between reasonable men. I'm listening. You release my men. You delete whatever videos you have. You forget this night happened. In return, I pull my people back from your town. Your daughter becomes untouchable. No one in my organization or any allied organization will go near her. My son will issue a personal apology, and I will discipline him for his stupidity. We part ways as professionals. No war, no blood, no federal attention that neither of us wants. This is a fair resolution, yes? It was a reasonable offer. From a tactical standpoint, it was probably the smart play. Take the win, protect Emma, avoid escalation with one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in North America. Walk away clean. But I looked around my living room, at the 4 men huddled against the wall, broken and bleeding, at the phone in my hand with over an hour of Emma's torture recorded on it, at the blood on my floor and the shattered coffee table and the crack in the wall where I'd slammed Carlos. And I thought about all the other daughters, all the other families living in fear along this border, terrorized by men like these who believed their violence made them untouchable. All the bodies in the desert, all the girls who'd disappeared, all the parents who'd never gotten justice. No, I said quietly. Excuse me? No deals. Your son broke into my home. He ordered my daughter chained, beaten, humiliated, and marked for death. These men carried out those orders with enthusiasm. They laughed about it. They filmed it. They were planning to extort me. And now you want me to pretend it didn't happen because you're offering empty promises of safety that I don't need and protection that means nothing? I've spent 23 years dealing with people like you, Mr. Salazar. I know how this works. The moment I show weakness, the moment I accept your generosity, I become someone you can manipulate, someone who'll look the other way when convenient, someone who'll keep quiet when you need silence. I won't be that person. I will never be that person. Then you're making a very dangerous enemy, Colonel. His voice had gone cold. The pretense of reasonableness was gone. No, Mr. Salazar, your son made a very dangerous enemy when he touched my daughter. I'm just responding appropriately. I'm just matching him to his own morals. He wanted to teach a lesson through violence? Consider this lesson delivered. Your men are going to walk out of my house now. They're going to go to the nearest hospital. They're going to get medical treatment and tell whatever lies they need to tell to explain their injuries. And they're going to remember every second of tonight for the rest of their lives. When they look in the mirror at their scars, when they feel their bones aching on cold mornings, when they wake up from nightmares, they're going to remember that violence has consequences, that someone eventually stands up, that someone eventually says no, that not everyone can be intimidated. And then, after my men limp home with your message, what prevents me from sending 50 men instead of 4? What prevents me from burning your house down with you and your daughter inside? What prevents me from making you watch her die before I kill you myself? The threat was real. I could hear it in his voice. This wasn't posturing. This was a man who'd built an empire on fear and violence, and I'd just publicly challenged that empire. What prevents you, I said slowly, is self-preservation. You're a smart man, Mr. Salazar. You didn't build your organization by making stupid decisions or letting emotion override strategy. So let's talk strategy. If you escalate, if you send more men, if you come after me or Emma, here's what happens. First, that video I recorded tonight goes to every federal agency simultaneously. Your Juarez operation gets burned to the ground. Second, I have friends, a lot of friends. 23 years in Delta Force creates a network of very capable, very violent men who don't forget their brothers. You send 50 men, I make phone calls, and 50 more show up to stand with me. Retired operators who are bored with civilian life and would love a chance to do real work again. You want a war? I'll give you a war that costs you millions in lost revenue, dozens of men, and brings federal heat you can't bribe or threaten away. I paused, letting that sink in. But here's the thing, Mr. Salazar. You're also smart enough to recognize an exit ramp when you see one. Your son fucked up, massively. He targeted someone he shouldn't have, and it blew up in his face. You can frame this internally as a learning experience. Young Marco got emotional, acted without authority, and paid the price. You disciplined him. You pulled back. You showed restraint and strategic thinking. Your organization doesn't look weak. It looks smart. Because starting a war with me doesn't benefit you at all. It just costs you resources and attention while your rivals in Sinaloa and CJNG start circling. Is that really worth avenging your son's wounded pride? The silence stretched out. 10 seconds. 20. I could hear Antonio Salazar breathing. Could imagine him sitting in whatever fortified compound he called home, surrounded by guards and advisors, weighing options with the cold calculation that had kept him alive in a business where most men died young. Finally, you make compelling arguments, Colonel, and you have balls. Stupid balls, perhaps, but impressive nonetheless. You're correct that a war between us serves no strategic purpose. You're also correct that my son acted foolishly without proper authorization. This creates difficulties for my organization that I must address internally. I'm glad we understand each other. However, Antonio continued, his voice hardening, understand this. My men will leave your house. They will receive medical treatment. We will withdraw from your immediate area. But if my son is harmed, if he turns up injured or dead or disappeared, I will assume it was you. I will assume you decided he needed to be permanently silenced. And then geography will not save you. Retirement will not save you. Your friends will not save you. I will dedicate every resource at my disposal to making you and everyone you love suffer in ways that will make tonight's events look like mercy. This is not a threat, Colonel. It is a promise, a guarantee. Do we have clarity? Crystal clear. Tell Marco to stay away from Emma. Tell him to stay away from this town. Tell him that he got lucky tonight, that his soldiers absorbed punishment that should have been his. Tell him that if I ever hear about him hurting another woman, threatening another family, or sending thugs to terrorize innocent people, I will consider our agreement void. And at that point, Mr. Salazar, I will come for him, and you won't be able to stop me. You're a very foolish man, Colonel Mitchell. Maybe, but I'm a foolish man who just taught your organization that some people can't be intimidated. Some targets aren't worth the cost. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Make sure that lesson sticks, Mr. Salazar, because I really don't want to have this conversation again. Neither do I, Colonel. Neither do I. We are finished here. The line went dead. I looked at the 4 men huddled against my wall. Carlos was staring at me with something between terror and awe, his broken fingers cradled against his chest. Phone Guy had passed out again from the pain of his broken ribs. Skinny was crying silently, blood still seeping from the glass cuts on his face. Heavyset was conscious, but vacant, probably concussed, staring at nothing. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "All of you. Go to the hospital. Tell them you were in a fight at a bar. Don't mention my name. Don't mention this address. Don't mention Emma. Because that video I recorded of your interrogation, that goes to the FBI if I ever see you again. If I ever hear about you hurting someone else. If you ever speak my daughter's name. Do you understand me?" They nodded frantically and scrambled for the door, supporting each other, leaving trails of blood on my floor. I watched them pile into a black Escalade parked 3 houses down. Of course they'd parked away from the house, didn't want witnesses. And peel away, tires squealing on asphalt, disappearing into the desert night. Then I locked the door, set the deadbolt, engaged the chain lock, checked every window, every entry point. Only then did I allow myself to collapse onto the couch. My hands were shaking violently now, not from fear, from the adrenaline crash, from the sheer magnitude of what had just happened, from the delayed shock of finding Emma like that. I'd just assaulted 4 cartel members in my living room. I'd just tortured them for information. I'd just threatened one of the most powerful criminal organizations in North America. I'd just told a regional cartel boss to go fuck himself. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat, without hesitation, without regret. Because she was my daughter. And no amount of danger, no threat of retaliation, no calculation of risk versus reward would ever make me choose differently. "Dad?" I looked up. Emma stood in the hallway, still trembling, wrapped in her bathrobe now, her face cleaned up, but the bruises already darkening to deep purple. She looked small, fragile, broken. Nothing like the strong, confident woman I knew her to be. I stood up and opened my arms. She ran to me, ran like she used to when she was small, and I held her while she cried. Really cried this time. Deep, racking sobs that shook her whole body. Months, or maybe years of held-back emotion pouring out all at once. I stroked her hair and whispered that she was safe, that it was over, that I'd never let anyone hurt her again, that I was here now and I wasn't going anywhere. "What did you do?" she finally asked, her voice muffled against my chest. "What needed to be done?" I heard you talking to someone on the phone. I heard you say things, terrible things. I made sure they understood that you're untouchable now, that there would be consequences if they ever came near you again." She pulled back and looked up at me, her eyes red from crying. "But they're going to come back. Marco's family, they're dangerous, Dad. Everyone knows what Los Zetas do to people who cross them. They might try, or they might decide I'm too much trouble and too much risk. Either way, we'll deal with it. Together. I'm not going anywhere, baby. I'm staying right here with you." "You came back early." Best decision I ever made. She was quiet for a moment, studying my face. "You were so... When I heard you in there, you were so calm, so cold, like it was just a job, like you were someone else. I've never seen you like that, never heard you talk like that." I thought about how to explain it, how to help her understand without traumatizing her further. "That's what they trained me to do, Emma. In Delta, in special operations, you learn to compartmentalize, to turn off emotion when necessary and just focus on the mission, to become someone who can make impossible decisions without hesitation. It's a survival mechanism, a tool. But it's not who I am at my core. It's not the father who loves you and wants nothing but happiness for you. It's just a darker version that I can access when I need to, when the situation demands it. You were good at it. Really good. It was terrifying. I'm sorry you had to see that side of me." "Don't be sorry. Her voice was fierce suddenly, her hands gripping my shirt. "Don't you dare be sorry. You saved me, Dad. Those men, they were going to—" She couldn't finish. "And you destroyed them, like they were nothing, like they were insects. And then you talked to that man on the phone, that cartel boss, and you didn't back down. You didn't show fear. You stood up to him. For me. Always, I will always stand up for you, no matter who, no matter what cost." We stood there in the wrecked living room for a long time, holding each other, letting the adrenaline drain away. Outside, the desert night was quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, that lonely, eerie sound that always made me think of emptiness and survival. "What happens now?" Emma finally asked. "Now we clean up. We make this place normal again. Then we live our lives. You keep teaching. I settle in properly this time. Do all those retirement things I've been planning. We watch our backs, we stay alert, but we don't live in fear, because fear is what they want. Fear is how they control people, and we're not going to give them that satisfaction." "But what if they do come back? What if the boss changes his mind?" "Then I'll handle it, the same way I handled tonight. I made it clear that attacking you brings consequences he doesn't want. Federal attention, loss of revenue, a war with someone who knows how to fight that kind of war. Most likely, he'll decide it's not worth it, that his son fucked up and paid the price. End of story." "And if he doesn't decide that?" I met her eyes directly. "Then I'll protect you, with everything I have, every skill I learned, every contact I built, every favor I'm owed. I will keep you safe, Emma. That's not negotiable. That's not conditional. That's absolute." She nodded slowly, processing. "You're really staying? For good this time? Not going back to wherever you were planning to go?" "I'm staying. This is where I belong. With you, protecting you. I spent 23 years protecting strangers in countries most people can't find on a map. It's time I protected the person who matters most." Tears filled her eyes again. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby, more than anything in this world." We spent the next 2 hours cleaning up the living room. I swept up the glass from the shattered coffee table, wiped down the blood spatters on the wall and floor, threw away the broken chair that had served its purpose so well. Emma worked beside me silently, moving stiffly because of her injuries, but I understood why she needed to do this. She needed to reclaim the space, to erase the physical evidence of what had happened here, to make this her home again instead of the place where she'd been tortured. When we finished, when the living room looked almost normal again, except for the crack in the drywall and the missing coffee table, I made her sit on the couch while I got ice for her ankle and her swollen face. Then I made tea, chamomile, her favorite since she was small enough to sit in my lap, and sat beside her. "Tell me about Marco," I said gently. "How did you meet him? When did you start dating?" She wrapped her hands around the mug, staring into the tea. 3 months ago, I went to Rosita's bar with some teacher friends. You know, the usual Friday night thing. He was there with his friends, and he seemed nice at first, charming, funny. He bought our table drinks, told stories that made everyone laugh. He was attentive, you know, asked questions, seemed interested in my work, in teaching. It felt normal, good. When did things change? Maybe 6 weeks in, he started talking about his business, about moving product and managing territory, about teaching lessons to people who disrespected him. At first, I thought he was exaggerating, trying to sound tough. But then I started noticing how people reacted to him around town, how they got quiet when he walked into places, how shop owners wouldn't charge him for things, how people literally stepped out of his way on the sidewalk. I realized he wasn't exaggerating. He was exactly what he claimed to be, a criminal. And you broke up with him. Last Tuesday, at Rosita's, same place I'd met him. He was telling this story about some guy who owed him money, about how they taught him a lesson by breaking his hands. And his friends were laughing. And I couldn't take it anymore. I told him he was pathetic, that his tough guy act was compensation for being nothing without his father's reputation, that any real man would be ashamed to live the way he does, proud of hurting people. She laughed bitterly. I really went off on him, called him every name I could think of. His friends were recording it on their phones, laughing. He went completely pale, just sat there staring at me. Then he said, very quietly, "You're going to regret that." I told him to go to hell and walked out. And tonight was the payback. Yeah, Carlos showed up with the others around 8. They knocked like normal visitors. I thought it was maybe a delivery or one of my students' parents dropping something off. I opened the door and they just pushed past me, forced me inside, told me Marco sent them, that I needed to learn respect, that they were going to teach me what happens to women who embarrass powerful men. I felt the rage flare again, but pushed it down. Did they? I couldn't finish the question. No, not that. They hit me, a lot, and they chained me up, and they made me say terrible things on camera, and they were planning to, after the video, but you came home. Her voice broke. If you hadn't come home early, Dad, if you'd shown up tomorrow like you planned, don't think about that. It didn't happen. You're safe now. But it almost did, and there are probably other girls, other women who said no to Marco or crossed Los Zetas somehow, women who didn't have someone show up to save them. She was right. I knew she was right. Emma had survived because I'd randomly changed my flight and arrived 12 hours early. Pure chance. Dumb luck. How many others hadn't been so lucky? I can't save everyone, I said quietly, but I saved you, and I made sure Marco and his family understand there are consequences for this kind of violence. Maybe that saves the next girl. Maybe it doesn't. All I can control is what happens in this house, to this family. Emma nodded, but didn't look convinced. We sat in silence for a while, drinking our tea, letting the night settle around us. Finally, she asked, "What happens tomorrow? Do we call the police? Do we report this?" "No." "Dad, think about it, Emma. We call the police. We file a report. What happens? Los Zetas has money, lawyers, connections. They'll tie it up in court for years. Meanwhile, we're public. Our names are in police records. The cartel knows exactly where to find us, and they have legal justification to surveil us, intimidate witnesses, drag it out until we give up or disappear. And that's assuming the local police aren't already on their payroll, which they probably are. No, this needed to be handled the way I handled it. Quickly, decisively, with overwhelming force that makes them think twice about escalation. So we just do nothing officially? We do what I'm going to do right now. I make phone calls. I reach out to old contacts, people I served with, people who owe me favors, people with resources and connections. I let them know the situation. I set up an early warning system so that if Los Zetas makes any move toward us, we know immediately and can respond. I create a network of protection that doesn't rely on courts or police, a network that speaks the same language these people understand. That's not how normal people handle things, Dad. No, it's not. But normal channels don't work against organizations like this. Cartels operate outside the law, so sometimes you have to meet them on their level. You have to speak their language. Violence, power, cost-benefit analysis. I made it clear tonight that targeting you costs more than it's worth. That's the only logic they understand. She processed that silently. You've done this before, not just tonight. This whole approach, the coldness, the violence, the threats. You've done this in other places. Yes. How many times? Too many to count. That was my job, Emma. Special operations, black ops, the missions you never read about in newspapers because they're classified or they never officially happened. Hunting terrorists, disrupting networks, extracting hostages, eliminating threats to national security. I've been doing this kind of work since before you were born. And you're good at it. Yes, I'm very good at it. I wish I wasn't. I wish I'd spent my career doing something peaceful and constructive. But I'm good at violence, at strategy, at reading people and situations and responding effectively. So that's what I did. That's what I was trained to do. And tonight, it saved your life. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, thank you for being good at terrible things when I needed you to be. I pulled her close. You never have to thank me for that. Protecting you isn't something you owe me gratitude for. It's just what fathers do. We sat like that until dawn, watching the darkness gradually lighten to gray and then to the pale blue of morning. The town woke up around us, cars starting, dogs barking, the sounds of ordinary life resuming after a night that had been anything but ordinary. Somewhere across town, 4 men were in a hospital, explaining their injuries and making up stories about bar fights. A young cartel lieutenant was facing his father's wrath for a mission that had gone catastrophically wrong and exposed operational details that should have stayed secret. A regional boss was recalculating the costs of revenge and deciding whether wounded pride was worth a war with someone who'd proven capable of inflicting serious damage. But in my living room, with my daughter safe beside me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not permanent peace, not the naive belief that everything would be fine, but the peace that comes from knowing you did what needed to be done, that you protected what mattered most, that when the moment came, when violence knocked on your door and threatened your family, you didn't hesitate. You didn't freeze. You responded with overwhelming force and absolute commitment. I'd spent 23 years preparing for moments like this, training, deploying, fighting, learning every skill and technique that could keep me alive in the world's most dangerous places. And tonight, all of it had mattered. All of it had paid off. Because I'd been there when Emma needed me most. And I'd done what only someone with my specific, terrible skill set could do. I'd matched violence with greater violence, fear with fearlessness, cruelty with cold-blooded efficiency. And I'd won. Epilogue. 3 months later, I got a single text from an unknown number. Your point was made, Colonel. We're even. Stay out of our business, we'll stay out of yours. A.S. Antonio Salazar. Confirming what I'd hoped, that he'd decided revenge wasn't worth the cost, that his son had fucked up and paid for it, and now they were moving on. I deleted the message and never heard from them again. Emma recovered, physically at least. The bruises faded over a couple weeks, turning from dark purple to green-yellow and finally disappearing. Her ankle healed, her split lip closed up without scarring. But the psychological scars took longer. She started seeing a therapist I found through VA connections, a woman who specialized in trauma, who understood violence in a way most civilian therapists don't. It took months of sessions, of crying, of working through nightmares and panic attacks. But she did the work. She pushed through. And gradually, I watched my daughter reclaim herself. She still teaches at the elementary school, still lives in the border town she loves because she believes these kids deserve dedicated teachers who won't abandon them. She's more cautious now, locks her doors religiously, checks her surroundings, keeps pepper spray in her purse. But she didn't let fear win. She didn't let them break her permanently. I'm proud of her for that. Proud beyond words. As for me, I settled into retirement properly this time. I bought a new coffee table to replace the one that got shattered, repaired the crack in the wall, replaced the broken chair with one that doesn't carry violent memories. I fixed the porch steps I'd been meaning to fix for years. I started a vegetable garden in the backyard, something peaceful and constructive, something that grows instead of destroys. But I also installed a security system, reinforced the doors, keep a loaded shotgun in my bedroom closet within reach, maintain regular contact with 3 former Delta operators who live within driving distance and who've made it clear they'll show up within hours if I ever make the call. Because I learned something that night, something I probably always knew but had never quite articulated. You can retire from the military, but you can't retire from who you are. I spent 23 years becoming someone capable of extreme violence in defense of others. That's not something that turns off just because you sign paperwork and hand in your uniform. I'm still that person. Still the Desert Phantom, even if no one calls me that anymore. Still the operator who can switch from loving father to cold-blooded combatant in seconds. Still the man who will do absolutely anything, legal or illegal, moral or immoral, justifiable or unforgivable, to protect the people I love. I hope I never have to prove that again. I hope that night in February was the last time I ever have to use those skills. But if someone comes for Emma again, if someone threatens my family, if evil walks through my door one more time, then they'll learn the same lesson Carlos and his friends learned, the same lesson Antonio Salazar learned, the same lesson I'll teach to anyone foolish enough to test me, that some fathers can't be intimidated, that some daughters are untouchable, that some lines, once crossed, bring consequences so severe they redefine your understanding of regret. Violence is a tool, sometimes necessary, always ugly, never to be celebrated. But when your daughter's life is on the line, when evil walks into your home and threatens everything you love, when every other option has been exhausted or wasn't available to begin with, then you use every tool at your disposal, without hesitation, without mercy, without regret. Because some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth becoming a monster to protect. Some prices must be paid, no matter the cost to your soul. That's the lesson they learned that night, and it's a lesson I'll reinforce every single day for the rest of my life, for as long as she needs me. I came home expecting peace. I found war, and I ended it the only way I knew how, decisively, brutally, completely. Mission accomplished. And the mission never really ends. Even in retirement, even in the quiet routines of civilian life, I'm still on watch, still ready, still capable, still her father, still her protector, still dangerous when I need to be. That's who I am. That's who I'll always be. And I'm okay with that.